If you're trying to conceive and feeling overwhelmed with fertility advice, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax, your fertility podcast and antidote to unhelpful fertility information. I'm Hannah, a fertility acupuncturist, teacher and campaigner for better fertility education. This podcast aims to empower and inform you about your menstrual cycle and fertility. It's basically all that information you didn't get in sex ed at school, with the aim of improving your understanding of your reproductive health and optimizing your fertility. Hello and welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax. And I'm very happy to say that today I am back with my partner in crime, Katie, who has come back to join me because this series we're doing a mixture of episodes between myself and Katie and episodes with fertility experts. So Katie, it is lovely to see your pretty face again.
Thanks. It's really nice to be back.
I'm not sure how long we've had a break for. I think maybe about a month, 6 weeks.
Probably, yeah. Feels like a long time since we did this
It does,
last.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sun is shining. I've got my
Oh,
windows
finally.
open.
Finally.
I've had a
Yeah.
hot cross bun. I'm drinking a cup of tea.
Having a
We're
great
nearly at
time.
Easter. Yeah. What have you been up to? Tell us what you've been up to since we last met.
Since we last met, I've been busy in clinic, which has been really, really nice. Seeing lots of reflexology clients. And also started working with fertility awareness clients again this year. I think I was like promoting that last time we spoke, but I've got a few people on the go now, so helping them to track their menstrual cycles, to mostly to help them to conceive actually at the moment. And then I'm starting at the moment of recording. I've got a group going for fertility awareness, and we're going to start that tomorrow night, which is really exciting. It's the first time I've run a group course, so I'm excited to dive into that dynamic.
Brilliant. And that's what we're actually going to talk about today, is we're going to talk about BBT charting, which stands for Basal Body Temperature, because people in the world of fertility awareness and acupuncturists as well use it specifically to help, I guess, inform them about what problems could be happening with the menstrual cycle, identify where the problems are, and it really helps inform us as to what we need to work on, like what hormones might be out of whack, and how we can work together and support clients by checking their BBT chart. So I also know that lots of people find it confusing, overwhelming, a bit of a pain in the arse, basically. So,
Yeah.
as you are the BBT expert, I thought it would be good if we did a whole episode on it and sort of broke it down so that people have got clear guidelines of what we're actually measuring and how it works and how to do it. So, shall we kick off? Do you want to explain a little bit about the history of BBT charting, or kind of what is it and what is it doing?
So BBT, as we said, is basal body temperature. So what this is your metabolic resting rate. So basically just what's going on with your metabolism and getting a gauge of what the temperature is at. So how we then use that in terms of charting the menstrual cycle is your body temperature does fluctuate depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle. So when you're in that pre-ovulatory phase, so before you ovulate, so when you have your period, and then before you ovulate, beating myself, and your temperature is going to sit slightly lower. However, after you've ovulated and progesterone kicks in, progesterone has a heating effect on the body. So if you're taking your temperature on a daily basis, so this is first thing in the morning before you get up and out of bed, before you have anything to drink, before you pee, like it's the first thing that you do to get that resting rate, the same way that you'd want to get your resting heart rate after having been sitting still for some time. It's the same with BBT, that you want it to be that resting rate. So you take it first thing in the morning, and after you ovulate, you should see your temperature go up, and then it should stay up. Now, if you your temperatures continue to stay up beyond like 16, 17 days, then you'd want to be considering taking a pregnancy test. But if you're not pregnant, your temperature will drop as your progesterone levels drop. So we can really get a good indicator of where you are in your menstrual cycle, what's going on. And we use it mainly to confirm ovulation has happened.
Yes. So I guess if you are the reason that people use this when they're trying to conceive and they're using this as like a fertility aid is I guess it is confirming that you are ovulating because sometimes, as we've discussed previously, apps aren't always reliable. And also OPKs aren't always reliable because you might be getting an LH spike, but you might actually not be, your follicle might not be releasing the egg. And again, with cervical mucus, even though you might be getting it because of your estrogen levels rising, it can't actually confirm 100% that you have ovulated. Whereas I think BBT can, is that right?
I don't know about the statistics specifically, but definitely once you see that temperature go up. So, in terms of when you're looking at a chart, what I want to see is you've got three temperatures that are higher than the previous lower six. Sounds confusing, but when you see it on a chart, it's quite clear. And
Yeah.
when you get those three higher temperatures, then you can confirm ovulation did happen. Like your temperature isn't going to go up and stay up unless you've ovulated.
It was interesting because I was doing a little bit of research before we came on. I
Oh.
know, check me out. And Googling. And it there was one study that said BBT charting is between, I think it was about 70 and 85% accurate for most people. So
Nice.
it's not 100%.
Yeah.
I also know that in the NICE guidelines, it's not recommended as a tool for fertility purposes, which I thought was interesting. They said that it cannot be it cannot be reliable enough for it to be considered a proper kind of diagnostic tool. And I guess really from the NICE perspective, they have to
Yeah.
be, there's so many areas for
Mm.
confusion, for getting it wrong, for things that could influence it. If you don't know what you're doing, that they can't say, yes, this is a tool to help fertility. So I guess that might be why they say it. So
Mm.
it definitely has to be used, with an awareness of that. But I think if you really get to understand it and try it, then it can be super helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen it be incredibly helpful for clients for different reasons, actually. It's not just to, I mean, it is to confirm ovulation, but the information that gives you can be for like a multitude of reasons. So I've definitely found it to be a useful tool to have if you can get past how stressful some people can find it.
Well, I'm going to do full disclosure. Look, I've got my, because I'm upstairs today. I've got my thermometer here, and
Oh, I think
I
we've got this. I think we've got the same.
same one.
Well, we've got a different color.
We'll have to put this on the show notes because this is actually a really good one, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, you've got a
It's an
yellow one.
orange one. Yeah, get one to match your brand colors.
I'm really jealous now. I'm putting mine away in disgust because mine is blue.
I love the little flexible end on this one.
I know. But the thing about me is that I have not been very good at doing. I've been trying to do this because of being perimenopausal
Mhm.
and you know using HRT and seeing what the difference is with HRT without HRT, and I keep forgetting to take it. So that is full disclosure for me because it's not for everybody.
No.
Sometimes it is stressful, and even though I have it by my bedside table, I manage about a week, and then something happens, and it goes out the window. And I know lots of people are much more organized than me and find it more helpful. So if that's you, then crack on, and if it's not for you, then there are other methods which we can talk about afterwards. So because we've just been talking about the thermometer, do you want to just say a little bit about which type to use?
So I generally recommend to people to use an oral thermometer. So that's one that goes in your mouth.
Yeah,
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy at all. I think the one that both Hannah and I have on I did get it from Amazon,
yeah,
like £7 or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
about that. So you don't have to spend a fortune on it. There are lots of options. You'll get like advertised like fertility thermometers, and they can be really expensive, even if they're just like the oral ones. And admittedly, I haven't used them, so I can't really speak to how good or what different information you get from the more expensive ones, but it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be super basic if you're just using an oral thermometer. So just stick it in your mouth and it doesn't need to cost you a lot of money. Um, there are other options for like wearable thermometers, which I know some people find to be it kind of takes that stress away of remembering to do it when you first wake up in the morning. So there's like a brand called Temp Drop that's like an armband that you wear. There's like rings that you can wear now. There's the Aura ring, and I think there's one called Femtech or something as well.
Yeah,
And what else is there? Ovusense, which is one that you insert to the vagina, and that
yeah,
takes your temperature as well. The one thing with all of these kind of wearable thermometers is they're taking an average of your temperature throughout the night. So you'll still see that kind of your temperature change from being lower to higher after ovulation. Yeah, going higher after ovulation.
yeah.
Um, with these like wearable devices, but you don't necessarily get that because with BBT you can get sort of like some information about, as you said, like hormones and what's going on with them, but often the temperatures can sit at like slightly different ranges depending on these wearable thermometers. So you may not get that type of information if you're using um a wearable device.
Yeah, I've been looking at Temp Drop recently because I keep thinking that might, because of I can't do BBT because I forget, I can't be consistent.
Mm,
I keep thinking that might be my solution,
yeah, I'm thinking about trying it.
yeah, because I think it will just take that kind of having to think about it out of the equation.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think I'm gonna. Yeah, I do keep looking at it, and yeah, wait until the end of the month, and then I'm gonna buy one because the thing about it is they're not cheap.
no.
But I do think you can get some really, really helpful information from it. And if you're just so Katie, if you're doing it with a thermometer, a
Mhm.
normal thermometer, as we've discussed, where do you think it's best to record the information? Do you think it's best to write it down or like pen and piece of paper? Do you put the information into an app? Like what would you recommend?
I personally like using an app. I use an app called Read Your Body, which I really, really like using. It's what I teach my clients to use. And that's because it's got no algorithms in it. So it does take a bit of time to kind of get your head around using it because you're going to put the information in and you need to understand how to interpret that information. Like it's not going to be like, congratulations, you've ovulated or anything like that. Um, so I like to use that because you get a really clear like visual graph. If you're going to do it on paper, you've got a BBT tracker template, don't you?
Yeah, I have one on the website, and I think I can put it in the show notes as well, so
Yeah, I
people
think
can
if you
download
put
it.
that in there, so then that way, if you're doing it by hand, you can physically put it into a chart and like connect the dots. There's something about seeing that visual with like the lines or the dots being connected to make it into a chart that can make it much clearer when the temperature has gone up and stayed up versus just looking at numbers. I've had like clients bring me like a list of numbers before and like it just takes a minute to kind of work it out compared to having that visual. So that I like to use like actual charts, whether that be like paper or within the Read Your Body app.
Yeah, and roughly speaking, can you give us an idea of roughly what your temperatures should be in the follicular phase and then what they should be in the luteal phase?
I like to see temperatures at about, so in centigrade, 36.3 up to like 36.8 before you've ovulated, and then for them to be about zero point 0.2 degrees higher in the luteal phase. So um it's a bit kind of variable what the luteal phase looks like, so it's going to be in relation to what your follicular phase is. But ideally, we don't want your temperatures to be much lower than that because that can, there's a few things it could indicate. The thing that we kind of want to rule out before anything else is if you see low temperatures. So, like when I say low in this instance, we're kind of thinking anything that's about 35 degrees or below being potentially you'd want to get screened for a thyroid issue. We can see low temperatures in people that have issues with thyroid, and that can be very linked to fertility. So you definitely want to get that checked and get a full thyroid panel and make sure that you're within the appropriate reference ranges if you've got fertility issues. But if your like results come back and there's not a thyroid issue there, then always want to just to be checking that you like your sleep's not disturbed. That could interrupt your temperatures, and also that you're eating enough. I often see people who are deficient in certain nutrients, but also just generally not eating enough, particularly if they're very active, having much lower temperatures.
That's really interesting. So that can be a sign of kind of overdoing it, I guess. If you're not eating enough or over exercising,
Yeah.
that can impact your temperatures. So,
Yeah.
and interestingly, because we were talking about this with Holly from the Bump Plan the other day about how do you know what when exercise is too much? Because it's so
Mm,
personal to every person. Like what is right for one might
mhm.
not be right for another. So I guess what you're saying is that for some people, if you're pushing it too hard, that could show up in a BBT chart.
Yeah, potentially, particularly if you're not nourishing yourself after exercise. We want to make sure that if you're leading an active lifestyle, whatever that looks like, or even just living a lifestyle, it doesn't necessarily have to be active, that you are eating enough, getting enough nutrients into your body, plenty of protein, fat, carbohydrates, like a well balanced diet. It's really, really important. And like we can see that in charts. Like I've had clients previously where the temperatures are really, really low, and then we like educate them on how you need to eat. and and then we can see the temperatures change. It can take a few cycles, but they can change, definitely.
Great. And what other things that so let's say you've been charting for like 2 or 3 months. I always say about 2 or 3 months, to get because really, I don't know whether you agree with this, but from one chart alone, it's difficult to really I mean, you get some information, but you need to see a couple of cycles to really be able to compare to see whether it's that one cycle is a one-off or whether there are continuous patterns that are then more kind of giving you more evidence that this is actually a thing rather than it just be an anomaly for that month.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. It's good to have, yeah, at least kind of 2 to 3 cycles of
Yeah.
data, like you say, because then you've just got more information, and it's not like um that's yeah, because like one cycle could be, as you say, an anomaly. Maybe you were really, really stressed and you your period was really late. And if you just took that as kind of that being your standard, but it's not, then you're not going to get, like you say, you're not going to get as much information from it as if you were looking across a few cycles and being like, okay, what are the patterns here? What are the consistencies? What are the inconsistencies? And being able to interpret and understand that. So, yeah, definitely having a few cycles is going to give you a lot of information of like, you kind of ovulating within the same window, and then like how long is the luteal phase and what's going on there? Are there any issues there and things like that to look at?
And so what really are the main things that you can pick up then from a BBT chart? What are the things that what are the concerns that you can pick up from or what can you see?
So the big thing is being able to see that ovulation has happened. So that's a really important one for all sorts of reasons. But like, say, for example, you're trying to conceive, you're able to look and be like, okay, ovulation has happened. And if you've timed sex to be within the fertile window, then there's the possibility of a pregnancy occurring. So there's that bit of information. But then also, if you're having issues, say if you were having like long and irregular cycles, maybe you have PCOS. What we can see with polycystic ovarian syndrome is we get like these sort of patches of cervical mucus. So you kind of get a bit of mucus, then it stops, get a bit of mucus, and you think you're going to ovulate, and then it stops again. What we can see is if you're using basal body temperature on top of cervical mucus, you're able to confirm when ovulation did in fact happen, rather than thinking, oh, I think it might have happened then, but I'm not sure. It kind of makes that a bit more definite, as opposed to just using mucus in that respect. Then in terms of kind of after ovulation, what we're able to see is if the temperatures are kind of like dipping around up and down all over the place, that could be an indicator of progesterone issues, as the progesterone isn't like able to kind of sustain that heating effect on the body. So temperature can kind of vary a bit. And then we can also see, based on the amount of days after your temperature's gone up, how long that luteal phase is. And that can be really vital piece of information. If you're trying to conceive, or if you're struggling with like kind of mood changes, PMS symptoms in the second half of your cycle, in an ideal world, you want that luteal phase, so after you've ovulated, to be about 12 to 14 days in length. That's kind of like an optimal healthy cycle. Anything less than, anything like 10 to 11 is kind of like borderline. We could look at improving it. Anything less than that, we want to really be definitely addressing it. Even if it's like 10 to 11 days, we want to address it. But if it's short, then we really want to look at that. So they're some of the kind of main things that it can cover. I'm trying to rack my brains of anything else that's jumping out. But I think that's the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess what you're confirming is that whether your cycle is an optimal fertile cycle, because that's what we talk
Mm,
about, don't we? Because you're going to confirm what date your ovulation is. So you're going to know that it wasn't too soon, because we don't like ovulation to happen like before day 10. It can be too soon. There's not enough time for that egg to mature. Can confirm that it's not too late in the day, although later isn't as detrimental as early. And as you say, like give you that confirmation that you have actually ovulated and that your progesterone is sustained and your luteal phase is long enough. So that's some absolutely cracking bits of information when you're trying to get pregnant and you're wondering, is my cycle optimal? Am I,
mm,
is it working as best as it possibly can to support potential fertility? So I think it's definitely something to consider if you've got any cycle issues, or you're just not clear, or you just don't get the fertile signs, you've got any worries, then I think it's a really good way to get some good information. And I always say to people, it's a good way to have information to then take to your GP,
mm.
because if you really need kind of like to push for testing, you can say, I mean, obviously, not they might not want to look at your BBT charts, but you can use it as good evidence to, I've been tracking my cycle. I'm concerned about this spotting. I'm concerned I'm not ovulating. All of those things are good enough evidence that your GP should then be putting into place you getting your hormones tested at the very least, or your thyroid tested if your temperatures are particularly low. So I think it can really give you lots of helpful information. Um, but when it comes to BBT, there's a few things to remember in terms of like things that can give you wrong readings. So can you just kind of walk us through what the basic ones of those are, please?
Yeah, so we want to make sure that in an ideal world, you're getting about 5 hours of undisturbed sleep before you take your temperature. That's going to allow your body to kind of settle and you to get an accurate reading of where your resting metabolic rate is. So, if your sleep is disturbed a lot, or if you're waking in the night a lot, if you're going up, get up to go to the toilet, like these are things that might cause your temperature to be disturbed in some way. What else is there? Medications can cause your temperature to change. So just being mindful of that and if that's impacting it. Alcohol is a big one that often causes temperature to spike. For some people, it does cause it to lower, but generally speaking, I've seen it where it causes people's temperature to spike. So if you have had a drink the night before, just make a note of that in your chart. The same if any of these things happen, so your sleep's disturbed, you're taking a different medication, just make a note of that in your chart. So if you see a really high temperature, you're like, oh, okay, that's a disturbed temperature as opposed to a kind of more true reading of what's going on. What else? Time changes if you're like traveling a lot and your body clock's on a different time and that's maybe interrupting your sleep. So just again being mindful of that. There was something else there.
Illness?
Illness. Thank you. I knew there was one. So if you've got fever, then obviously your temperature's going to
Mm.
be way up high, and that's not going to necessarily be reflective of what is going on in terms of where you are in your menstrual cycle. So with all of these things, just put them into your chart, and the more you chart and the more you feel able to add into your chart, you're going to understand what these different things do to you. So, for instance, I know I can have a glass of wine, that doesn't affect my temperature. If I have two or more, it spikes it. So, just knowing these different things, and they're different for everyone. So, the more information you're able to put into your chart, the more you're going to understand that's a disturbed temperature for me.
Yeah. And all of these things are not are reasons not are not reasons to stop.
No.
It's just making a note so that when you look back on the chart, you're not like alarmed. I often get people who come in and they say, I don't know what happened on that night. It's gone really high, and we work out that it was a Friday night, and
Yeah.
they might have had a drink. And then Saturday morning, they might have stayed in bed a little bit longer, and so they took their temperature at a different time. And so when
Mm,
you know that that
yeah.
wasn't your ovulation, and then it suddenly dropped afterwards. That was just you had a drink and you took your temperature later
Yeah.
the next day.
Yeah, time's a really good point actually. That the later in the day you take your temperature, the higher it's going to be.
Mm.
So maybe in the Read Your Body app, it allows you to put the time in that you took the temperature. So that's quite good. And
Oh yeah, that is
so
handy. I don't know many that do that.
yeah, it's a really good one. So then you can see that because I like to get my clients to take temperature within a 2 hour window. I know a lot of people say like at the same time every day, but I don't think that's particularly practical.
Mm.
So 2 hours kind of allows a bit of leeway for waking up at different times, just depending on what's going on. And so just, yeah, putting the time in that you take your temperature and just knowing that the later it is, it's likely to be higher.
Yeah. So I think we have pretty much covered the sort of general basics of BBT charting,
I
but
think so.
tell us if people want more support, because I know you do a lot of work supporting people who are wanting to use this as a method to understand their cycle and enhance their fertility. Just tell us a little bit more about that, like how you can support people if they want to go a bit deeper or if they want kind of extra help with this. How does that work?
So, at the moment, I'll just be working with people one to one, and I can take you through the process of learning like how to observe your cervical mucus. So we've obviously talked at length about that before, and all the different kind of mucus patterns that can present and what they mean, but then also your basal body temperature and what's going on with that, because sometimes you start taking your temperature and like you're really like excited about doing it, but then you get the chart in front of you and you're like, what does that actually mean? So I often spend time, so if you have like reflexology with me, then like please feel free to bring charts in and we can have a look at them there. But if you are wanting to go much deeper, then like coming in for some fertility awareness education is going to be a really important piece to understanding like exactly what's going on with your menstrual cycle and being able to understand when your fertile window is, to be able to see that you are seeing mucus, if we need to look at improving that, to understand what's happening with your temperatures. And again, if there's things that we need to work on, having that support and kind of having like not temperatures, appointments over a series of times, then you can have that like accountability for making those changes. Because that's one of the things that we can often see with the menstrual cycle is people are really excited to get going to begin with, but because it can take like that sort of 3 to 6 month period to see changes in the menstrual cycle, it can feel quite disheartening to do it on your own. And I think a lot of people often come to us when they've been trying and they just feel a bit like, I just need some support to do this. And that's a huge amount of the work that both you and I do.
Yeah, because the thing is that you don't want to do it and it to be it causes more stress
Yeah.
and or anxiety. You start
Mm.
looking at the charts and really worrying that there's something wrong and that you don't know what it is. And you know, I think if you've got straightforward charts and you've got an understanding of it, then it can be quite straightforward. But
Yeah.
if you're completely new to it and maybe you've got irregular cycles, then it's very easy to feel overwhelmed. And we do get lots of messages, don't we, from people who are really stressed out that their chart means that something is seriously wrong,
Yeah.
and sometimes that it could be identifying something that definitely needs addressed, but sometimes it could just be an anomaly, or we need to question people and check how they've been doing it, because there is, as we said at the beginning, there is room for error and there is room for it to not be 100% accurate. So we just want to make sure that we're not being led down a kind of rabbit hole of despair unnecessarily so, and we're getting the right support that people need.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, so I guess what's important to end on is this idea of like stressing, like whether it stresses you out, and when you're trying to conceive, if you find that waking up every day and having to think about your fertility because you're taking your temperature before you've even got out of bed, if that is really triggering for you, and it's putting you on the wrong foot at the start of every day, then we would always say don't do it. There are other ways that you can track this information. There's other testing that you can do, there's other ways of tracking. And if you work with somebody like myself or Katie, then we can really help support you with that. So be very mindful, because lots of people I see in clinic do get more stressed about, when they start doing this, it just becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. So we always say proceed with caution and just see how you go with it, because you don't have to do it. And there's lots of other ways you can find that information. So thank you, Katie. That was an amazingly helpful step by step walk through how to do BBT charting.
Good.
And I was going to say that if anybody wants to message us about their chart, or they want to find out more information about working with Katie one to one, or in her group, because I know you're just about to start it, but if you start, I'm sure you'll be running it again.
Yeah.
Then get in contact and we can give you more information. And also, there is charts. I'll put a link on the show notes to everything that we've discussed, so you can find it all there, and hopefully it's helpful. So all that's left for me to say is thanks, Katie, and your yellow thermometer that I'm now very jealous of.
It's actually orange, but
It looks, oh yeah, oh
it's
yeah,
cuter. Yeah.
yeah, yes. Well, thank you very much for your time as always,
No,
and
thank you.
we'll see you again soon.
See you soon.
Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this and want to find out more, then come and join my free community in Facebook. We have loads of resources. You can catch up on all our previous webinars and be the first to know about forthcoming events. To sign up, just follow the link in the show notes. And if you'd like to work one-to-one with myself or one of the team, then please see our website, hannahpern.com, where you can book in directly or organise a discovery call to find out how we can support your fertility and your reproductive health.